I got a really bad email from someone when I stopped playing Fortnite. They're like, I can't believe you stopped playing Fortnite. I can't connect with my kid anymore. But honestly though, like you can be that connecting point of where like people can see, like a dad can watch what you're doing and start to understand like what his kid's into. And you as like a connecting point, which is really neat. Or even just facilitating a community where people can come together.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am one of your hosts, Pete Fletzer, and along with my co-host, Nick Milkey, we talk to the people behind the Star Wars fandom. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Tim Havlock. You know him as Darkness429 on Twitch. You may also know him from his Star Wars podcast, Star Wars and Scotch, but he's not just a gaming sensation. He's a passionate Star Wars superfan who has made a name for himself as one of the top streamers in the gaming stream industry. In this episode, we'll dive into Tim's incredible journey from aspiring healthcare provider to gaming influencer. Yes, there is definitely a path there. You're not going to want to miss that story. He'll share his experiences playing popular titles like Star Wars Battlefront, Fortnite, and even Call of Duty, giving us insight into how gaming intersects with the Star Wars universe and real life. But it's not all just fun and games. Tim gets real about the stress of podcasting in the Star Wars community, especially when faced with some of the toxic side of the fan base. He'll talk about how criticism has impacted his love for the galaxy far, far away and what keeps him motivated despite some of these challenges. It's a conversation that I think many content creators and fans will totally resonate with, especially in today's climate. And for you Star Wars gamers out there, Tim will reveal his top 5 all-time Star Wars favorite games. Trust me, you don't want to miss his insights on what makes these games special for both casual players and for diehard fans alike. So whether you're looking to relive some of your nostalgic moments online or find something new to play, Tim's recommendations are sure to excite. But before we jump into the interview, I want to remind you how you can connect with us. Check out our website at theSSWnetwork.com for all things related to the show. You can also find us on social media at the SSW Network, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can also follow this show specifically on Twitter at ATGcast. And if you enjoy what we do here and you want to support us, consider joining our Patreon program at patreon.com/the SSW Network, where you can gain access to exclusive content, early releases, and even some behind-the-scenes action. And lastly, we love hearing from you, so don't hesitate to drop us a voicemail at 504-321-1501. We may even feature your message on a future episode. That's 504-321-1501. Now, let's get to our conversation with Darkness429, our friend, Mr. Tim Havlock. Tim,
hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
So you've been a Twitch streamer for...
Yeah, so I started streaming Twitch in it was actually Justin TV. I was in college at the time, so this is probably 2011 2012. It was still Justin TV, and I started streaming in between classes in college, which was kind of fun. I was playing Battlefield 3 at the time, and then life took over. Graduated, moved. And long story short, started streaming again because I thought it was fun, and I was lonely. It was just my wife and I, and she was working full-time job being a mechanical engineer, and I was going to school to finish up some prereqs to be a physician's assistant. And streaming was kind of there when I needed it the most. Yeah. And so Titanfall came out, and I started streaming Titanfall just for fun. And then it quickly went from fun to being really fun, and saying that I could quit my part-time job, and then I had to make the decision of, do I keep going to school or do I play video games full-time? So it was no longer just a fun thing that I did on the side. It was like, wow, this is serious. Like, this could actually be a real full-time thing. So made the decision and never turned back.
It's wild to me that there's this whole culture, and it's probably because obviously if you were in school at that time, you're obviously younger than us, but I watch my son watch video game streams all the time. And this is I'm going to sound like I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways when I was a kid kind of guy. But like, to me, that sort of connection, like watching games, I'm starting to do it more. Like I've watched Lloyd, who does some of the production on our show. Yeah. But like, talk to me about that culture.
Yeah, when I first started streaming, it was kind of like YouTube Live. You know, it was like the thought of like, oh, it's a YouTube video, but it has a chat and you're doing it live. I was like, oh, that's cool, it's neat. And I think it was still kind of like, it was, for a lack of the better word, it was kind of like a redheaded stepchild of like the content creation scene. Like it was just kind of like frowned upon as like, you know, like, oh, you're not real content creators. You guys are just like, you guys aren't YouTubers. Like, you don't put in the work. You just go live and you sit there in front of a camera and you play video games. Like, there's no structure to what you do. Like, there's no validity. And so like there was a point in time where like, yeah, there was like, no one was really going to Twitch except like the hardcore like niche guys. Right. And I want to say it wasn't until probably like the Fortnite time is when it really became like accepted, and not really even accepted, but it became more mainstream and people were recognizing it as an actual thing. And then once we get into the pandemic and everyone kind of gets put into lockdown, that's when it really opens up and everyone starts to recognize it as like, oh, this is a real thing. But the thought of being able to connect with people at like all different ages, within all different types of just like walks of life, and it's crazy to think like you can be like the connection point between like a son and like it's weird because like everyone makes a joke. Like I had a really bad email from someone when I stopped playing Fortnite, and they're like, I can't believe you stopped playing Fortnite. I can't connect with my kid anymore. I dare you. But honestly though, like you can be that connecting point of where like people can see, like a dad can watch what you're doing and start to understand like what his kid's into, and you as like a connecting point, which is really neat. Or even just facilitating a community where people can come together and make those connections. And you are that intermediary between those people, and they may have never even met each other before, but because of your live stream, you created a community that allowed them to meet. And I know that I have people in my community that got married because they met each other in my community. Wow. It's just nuts. Yeah, it's really cool. So I never thought I'd have the ability to like inspire people to do things like go on a weight loss journey or get married because they made friends because they were playing video games one night. You know, it's just like I never thought I was going to ever have that opportunity. But being a live streamer, being a community leader, I made that possible, which was really cool.
It's really fascinating. And I wanted to tag onto that just a little bit, like what you're saying, Pete, and even what you're saying, Tim, is I'm just a couple years younger than Pete. So I also fall into that like old guy, you know, I'm looking across the room at my NES that's looking at me going, you're talking to a guy that plays video games on the internet. And I'm over here with all 8 bits I have. And so, I mean, but this is the thing, as a guy in his mid to late 40s, I play Fortnite almost every night when my kids go to bed because it's dumb, mindless fun. And it's the kind of stuff that I did playing GoldenEye in college. It's the kind of stuff that I did. Like, it's not complicated. I'm terrible at Halo. I can't begin to play like Call of Duty or any of that. It's so fast and there's so many things going on. I'm like, I'm too old for this. And it's that weird in between. But I've also seen some of the streams. And like Pete said, our friend Lloyd, our producer, he plays a lot of Call of Duty. And so I'll tune in when he's playing. And part of it is I can just kind of zone out and watch it, but I can have a conversation with him in the chat. We've got some friends who did some Star Wars stuff, David and Tim, father, son, or as father and son, and they would do it. They got on and the dad played The Last of Us while his son, who had played it twice, was just there for the journey. It creates this interesting dynamic where you can have a conversation and you're playing a video game, so the pressure's off. Like the distraction is the video game. So it's almost like the interactions are more natural and more genuine, as opposed to right now, we've brought you on to interview you and talk to you. But if the three of us were playing Fortnite and laughing, but also asking serious questions, your attention is pulled. And I feel like the responses are more genuine. And hearing you talk about that with the people that watch, does that kind of track? Does that make sense that like you've created this ability almost to have more vulnerability and openness because there's a third thing that's distracting from, oh my God, I'm being vulnerable right now?
I think that kind of comes with time and honing your craft and understanding like who you are as an entertainer, because you can always have that mask. For the longest time, I always wanted to like separate who like Tim and Darkness429 were. I never wanted them to be the same person. So like my level of vulnerability, if you will, of like what I was willing to express to people and what I was willing to share with them was very different versus how I am now. I'm a much different person. I have a son. Like he's 5 years old, and so I see myself as a much softer person than I was 5 years ago. The way that I look at life and the way that like I see my experiences versus how I would have said them like 8 years ago, completely different.
Right.
And so like, yeah, I think like streaming can be that depending on the entertainer that you're watching. You know, you could have a lot of there's 3 different types of streamers. I think you can really categorize them into three different slots. You have your highly competitive entertainer. You have your very, very competitive. They focus on playing the game. They focus on playing it well, but they won't read their chat. They won't pay attention to what's going on, but they're really damn good at what they do. And then like maybe every once in a while they'll thank for donos and things like that. And then you have the person who's highly engaged, who's extremely funny, who can just make just owns the room, but's terrible at video games. And then you have the in between. You have the person who can be like semi-competitive, but isn't like able to make it a pro. And then you have the person who can be like, they can own the room and they can drive a conversation, but they might not be the funniest person in the room. Like, I think honestly, that's the most dangerous streamer. That's the person who can go the furthest in their career is because they're able to balance both of those things out. I think that's always the biggest thing. Like, I think that I look for with content creators and even just like as myself is the authenticity and being authentic to your audience, I think is really important. It might, and I don't think a lot of people see it that way. I think like there are people that see it that way, but it's also something that's kind of just like overlooked because it isn't what drives the money.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that a number of the sort of clickbait artists, I can't imagine that they're full-time clickbait artists. Like they can't honestly believe all the.
It's gonna be exhausting.
How can you be angry that much all the time?
I don't know.
Just take a nap.
But I think, you know, authenticity, honestly, that's what drove me to Star Wars and Scotch, because you guys just had, you know, I think so. And I think, first of all, I liked it because Scotch, very important part of the show.
I worked at Star Wars during the pandemic. Like, it was a great name during the pandemic because it's all we drank. And then the world opened up and we were doing the morning.
It's harder to do that in the morning.
Hard to drink in the morning.
But so how did you go from game streaming to Star Wars, and how did you get together with Kevin?
Yeah, so Star Wars has always been kind of a thing that I've just always enjoyed. I've always loved it. I've, you know, from watching the original trilogy in the incorrect order on the original VHS to you know, Knights of the Republic. And playing through that, and Jedi Academy, and starting to read through the books and then the shows, and then getting to be involved with like Battlefront, you know, getting to actually like go to Stockholm and be involved with the development of those games and stuff. That was really cool, really neat. So like Star Wars has always been a part of my life. And I met Kevin through a mutual friend of ours, King Ithalian at the time, and then we went into business together. So we were kind of just like shooting the breeze one day, and we started talking about The Mandalorian, and we're like, oh, you know, it was really neat that we you know, at the time we had just done like a Star Wars style like show at our event at the time it was called Guardian Con. We had changed the name to GCX. We did a little like Star Wars panel because we had a friend that was from Wikipedia at the time. One of the Star Wars news or like news outlets, and he came on and we just talked for an hour, and it was like we packed the room, and people were just like nonstop questions for the whole hour, and it was great. And we're like, let's try this, let's see what happens. And so we just thought it'd be fun just to kind of talk about The Mandalorian, and we're like, oh, we're really into shows. Okay, so shows is our thing. Well, what's going to happen when Star Wars shows aren't running? Well, let's try doing The Witcher. Oh yeah, that'll be great. Let's watch The Witcher and we'll talk about it. We'll come to find out Kevin and I don't know anything about The Witcher. We don't care. like I played the games. Like, yeah, that was fun, but I don't know anything about it. I knew a lot about Star Wars.
Right.
And so we're like, let's just keep talking about Star Wars, even when there isn't stuff. Like we know plenty of things about Star Wars. Let's just keep talking about Star Wars. And so like that was our thing, is like when shows weren't on, we'd talk about comics and books. And that was great because the High Republic was starting to come out. I was starting to pump out things, and it was a good cadence of content was starting to roll out. So that's kind of in a nutshell how that all kind of came to be.
Yeah, and again, the show. So you're on hiatus right now, but all the episodes are still out there. Go listen to them. I mean, it's like if you look, there's a weird thing to say to a guest, but I'm going to say it. If you like the way Nick and I kind of go back and forth, you're going to love the way Tim and Kevin go back.
I've always told people the way that I talk to people like online, the way that I am online, I just try to think like that's how I am in person. And so like that's like any conversation is like this is how I talk to you at a bar. Like this is how it would be if we were just having a drink.
Well, and that's kind of like the way we've always sort of tried to build the Around the Galaxy shows, like that moment when Star Wars fans meet. Like I think that's kind of and I think Star Wars has such a great sort of connectivity, and when you find out something, when you see somebody wearing a Star Wars shirt, or they're bumper sticker on their car or whatever, like there's an instant connection. And but the chat, we talked about this a little bit a second ago, like there's so much content out there, there's so much happening. How are you feeling about sort of the state of Star Wars right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the state of Star Wars is kind of a reason why we took the hiatus that we did. Coming off the heels of Acolyte, it was just really rough. And it was kind of like, what's the point of doing something that we're just doing for fun? It's not like we're making any like money off of this. Like we have full-time jobs. Like I content create full-time. Kevin is, doing our business stuff. And then I'm also helping out with GCX and everything else on top of it, where we got our merch company here. And so there's a lot, long story short, very busy. And so, what's the point of, like, I got to the point with some of our posts that would pop off on TikTok, I wouldn't look at the comments because I was absolutely afraid of what people were, and like, not afraid of, just like, I didn't want to just dig through it. Yeah. I didn't want to be bothered with what I knew was going to be in there, which is going to be a bunch of people saying that, like, oh, you guys are woke, or I can't believe, like, you're the problem. You're the reason why Star Wars is the way that it is, or like anything else that in between, where it's like, man, you took a 15-second clip to completely come out of context and you warped it into a version of reality that fits your narrative. Yep. And so it's just, that was exhausting. And even like playing, like hell, even playing the latest Star Wars game, playing Star Wars Outlaw was fun for me as a Star Wars fan, because I appreciated all the work that went into it, but it was exhausting to create content around, because no matter what, it was wrong. And it's just like, I got to a point where I was like, I just want to be a closet Star Wars fan now. It's like, I don't want to openly talk about it, on the internet, other than like on stream. But why do I want to make content around it when I'm just going to get beat up? Right. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now with the Star Wars fandom as a whole. It's like, I love it. I love everything about Star Wars, but it's kind of like, it's just something that I've kind of reserved for myself right now, because I really loved Acolyte and I hate that I got beat up for it. Because it's not that I think that it was perfect. There was definitely there are many episodes where I sat down and reviewed it and I'm like, that was bad. It could have been better. They should have done this. But I always hit it with but I like this. There was something about every episode where I was like, no, I see where they're going. Or let Dave cook. Let's see where he's going with this. Oh, we're finally going to get a piece of content we've been begging for years. And what are you going to do? Oh, you're just going to poop on it. Like, come on, guys. We got Plagius. And instead of being happy about the direction of something, we just wanted to burn it to the ground.
Just to be mad.
Yeah, just to be upset because it didn't fit my Star Wars. It's just like, it's like you get upset about, fire and space, and it's like, where do you draw the line?
Right. Yeah, and the weird thing is, in A New Hope and the Death Star.
I was going to say, 1977 when there was still fire in space.
The amount of clips you can go through and see all that, but no one's going to complain about that, are they?
Not at all.
We're going to complain about a CD-ROM that came out, that has a date that isn't even canonical.
Somebody's birthday. A birthday of a fictional alien.
I want to know who spent the time to go find that.
I don't think we really want to know that.
just a part of me does. Part of me wants.
Voyeuristically speaking, You bring up a good point, and we've talked about this, and it hit for us during the writer's strike when Ahsoka was out. Yeah. And we had made a conscious decision, because we've got lots of friends who are writers who have been on the show, and we wanted to stand in solidarity with what we were doing. And we're nothing big, but we said, while they're on strike, we want to support them however we can. And we didn't cover the show. Sure. And so we watched the shows when they dropped, and we texted each other. And I think it was by the second episode on the same day, we texted each other at some point and went, It's really weird. Like, I'm watching this because I'm excited to watch it, not because I'm watching it thinking, how are we going to talk about this on the show tomorrow night? Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. It was a chance to reserve it for ourselves and get back to, I just like watching Star Wars. And I've tried to carry that forward as the strikes were resolved and as we've gotten new stuff to go, yeah, we talk about it, but this is a hobby for us. Like, we also have real lives and jobs and whatever. It's not that serious. It's not that, but there's so much of that out there that I totally understand the point that you're talking about of going, yeah, we need a break. Like, it's time to just sit down for a minute.
Yeah. It's just, it was also just kind of just seeing the constant dread on social media, which is another just like whole other aspect to it, where it's just like, you see the other content creators that are just like tired of it. Is everyone gets wrapped up in it, even though it's like, if you really look at the percentage of it, it is and I think the article that came out from Vanity really, like, they really, was it Variety or Vanity?
Variety. Yeah.
It was Variety. The article that came out, they even talked about it. They were even saying that, like, the most negative toxic people are a percentage of a percentage of a percentage.
Correct.
Like, they are the smallest, but they are the loudest.
But they're the loudest.
They're the loudest. And so they drive so much, spotlight to their messaging, and so people just and it just, as social media does, it's a wildfire, and it just picks it up, and it's just like you can't escape it. That's the other thing too.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, from what virality and what success looks like in streaming, the problem is the people who do it well with the negativity, who are able to make that their thing. Unfortunately, their messages are bubbling up, and so the example I always give Nick is, before we went to Star Wars Celebration in California a couple of years ago, my dad, who doesn't, he's a casual Star Wars fan, and he said to me, he said, I heard they're recasting The Mandalorian, and I was like, where did you hear this? He goes, some guy named Mike Zero, and I was like, oh my god. That he went on a little Star Wars search because he was going to Star Wars Celebration, and he got the garbage, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge with all of it, and that's what's exhausting.
Yeah, most definitely.
You are a gamer. We're Star Wars guys. You're a Star Wars guy. Yeah. Let's just talk about Star Wars video games for a few minutes.
Sure, totally.
The whole pantheon, the table is laid out in front of you. You're picking 3 or 4. What are the 3 or 4 that are like the Star Wars games you love? You can play them over and over again. I mean, I still play Battlefront 2. If I get tired of Fortnite, and it's 11 o'clock and all my kids are in bed, like, I'll throw some Battlefront 2 on. I'll play, Super Star Wars from, SNES still kicks my ass. Like, where are you with the pantheon of Star Wars games that are out there?
I mean, so from least to greatest, I'll give you 5.
Okay.
Nice.
So I think coming in at number 5, I would put Outlaws. I think Outlaws is, if you really look at it from top to bottom, what Ubisoft made was a Star Wars Red Dead Redemption, which was really cool. It was really neat. Now, do I think it could have been more? Most definitely. But the amount of detail that was put into it, from the dialogue between just random people on the streets, to being able to play endless games of Sabacc, being able to bet on faith year races, like all of these things, for the normal gamer, probably didn't give a crap, right? But for the Star Wars fan, that was a love letter. I think that was a love letter to Star Wars fans, and I was very, very happy with it. I think overall they did a great job. Coming in number 4, it would be Star Wars. Jedi Survivor. I think Survivor was good, and I kept on going back and forth between, like, is Outlaws and Survivor, like, which one's better? I love Fallen Order. Fallen Order is a phenomenal, and that one's like in the top 3 for me. Like, that is just an amazing game from start to finish. It's fantastic, and I really wish that Respawn would have just built off of what they had in the first game and kind of just kept going with it. In Survivor, they tried to do this like open world style game where it was just like, I felt like there was just a lot of nothing when I really wanted to just kind of just go through that linear story that I had in the first one. Also, they dropped the ball on the whole Zepho storyline. I don't know why they had to just do this whole marketing pivot to High Republic, it felt so forced. None of it made sense. It was just like out in left field, and all the cool High Republic stuff that we covered in the books, they don't even cover in the video game. So it's just like, what's the point of you even bringing up High Republic to just confuse people if they haven't read the books? Right. So that's the other one that was kind of weird for me. So that was 5. It was 4. For 3, I would say probably. Oh man, so because Knights of the Republic is first for me. Survivor is 3, or is 2. Fallen Order is 2. What was 3? I had it ready to go, and I lost it completely. What's the one where you're Darth Vader's apprentice? Totally brain farting. Star Killer.
Force Unleashed.
Unleashed would be number 3 for me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So Force Unleashed was fantastic. I mean, like one of the most iconic Star Wars scenes is just pulling down a Star Destroyer.
Pulling down the destroyer.
So that's definitely that's up there. I think in the top 3 games. And then 2 would be Fallen Order. Just a phenomenal, just Star Wars story from start to finish. It hits all of the marks. Combat, the Jedi experience of being able to use the Force, going from like nothing to something. It was a great hero progression. It covers all of the really cool planets. It makes note to just awesome things like from Clone Wars and Rebels and just like all of these just really neat things that you're like, man, I just would love to experience that in a video game. You get to do it. And then doing this Dark Souls style mechanic really fits well in the Star Wars universe. So just really love that. And then Knights of the Republic. Like I don't think anyone will ever say like that's a bad video game, no matter what year it is. I feel like in 20 years from now, like you could still go back and play Knights of the Republic, and you're gonna be like, yeah, it aged, it did not age well. It's rough, but the story is just so good. It's just an amazing Star Wars story from start to finish. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we actually get that remake.
Man, that's so.
Man, I hope we get it.
Do you have any insight on that? Because that's been sort of
absolutely not. It has been this constant back and forth of we're working on it. I don't know. The project's dead. We're working on it. Right. So all that we know is that it's happening. It is in production, but it has changed hands so many times. It has started. It has stopped. It has been reset. So it is going to be like one of those games like the High Republic game coming out, Eclipse. Eclipse is supposed to come out in 2028. Yeah. So who knows?
Unbelievable.
Who knows?
It's crazy. Of course, my favorite all-time Star Wars video game is X-Wing versus TIE Fighter on the PC in like 1997 or whatever it was. But
right on the heels of Wing Commander.
Yes, with Mark Hamill in Wing Commander. Well, so Tim, we didn't get into coffee, but and I know you got that going on. But tell us a little bit about where we can follow you, where we can keep up with you, and where people can continue to watch you play. What are you playing right now?
So right now it's a weird time. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's a weird time for video gaming. If you are up on like trying to stay up with what's new and what's happening, there's not a lot. So it's been Throne in Liberty, which is a new free to play MMORPG. So if you're into that, that's been a lot of fun. Played Demonology today, it's spoopy season, so Halloween. It's always great to play scary games. And then Magic the Gathering. I have become a big fan of cardboard, and I play lots of Magic the Gathering now. So I've been doing a lot of that. But you can follow me over on Twitch, on YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram. It's Darkness429 everywhere. And then I know we didn't get to talk about coffee, but I do own a coffee company. So if you're into fresh roast to order coffee. We roast over on Long Island. We roast on the island. It's called King's Coast Coffee. You can head over to kingscoastcoffee.com. We've got all different types of roast for you to check out. We just launched our fall roast, and then we'll be getting ready to go into the holidays with cocoa and all those things.
Amazing. I got to check that out.
Yeah, most definitely. Actually, if you guys want to, after the show, send me your address. We'll get some coffee over to you.
Nice. Oh, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll get that over to you guys.
Good. Well, Tim,
thanks so much for coming out.
And for sure.
Give my best to Kevin, and
I will.
I hope Star Wars and Scotch comes back, and I hope you love Skeleton Crew, because I feel like that's going to be
very excited. I really am excited for it. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, dude,
of course.
Anytime. You are welcome anytime to join us, and we'll talk more stuff. So,
all right, sounds good, guys.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. A big thank you to Tim for joining us today and sharing his journey, and to you for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out Tim on Twitch and social media at Darkness429 to keep up with all his latest gaming adventures. And don't forget, you can connect with us too. Visit our website at theSSWnetwork.com to stay updated on all things around the galaxy. Join our vibrant community on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at the SSW Network, and let's keep this conversation going. If you're enjoying the show, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/the SSW Network. Your contributions go a long way to bring us more content and special guests. We love hearing from you too, so feel free to leave us a voicemail at 504-321-1501. We might feature your message on a future episode. So share your thoughts, your questions, and even some of your favorite Star Wars moments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate your support, and we can't do it without you. So until next time, may the Force be with you. Around the Galaxy is copyright 2024 Pete in the Seat Studios. Our music is brought to us by the band Apollo's Ghost, who can be found on Spotify or wherever you find your favorite music.